So, the new album is called SEMA4. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got that title and what that's about?
SEMA4, the title SEMA4 came about by accident. It was for a piece, and that was the initial thing. It was a little misunderstanding because the piece is written in 7/4. And we were rehearsing. Buster said, what piece are we going to do now? I said, 7/4. And he said, SEMA4? What's that? What's that? Which one is that? So it was just a joke. We had a laugh. And then I thought about it, and I thought I really liked the word semaphore. And then I was thinking about the meaning, and I kind of looked up the origin of the word. And it's got, it's not entirely clear, but it looks like SEMA, S-E-M-A, SEMA or SEMA, comes from Greek, and that's about a signal, code, a signal, and phoros is from a bearer. So it's about carrying or communicating a signal, a code. And seemed to me that there were lots of things there that connected with music and with what we do together when we're playing. We communicate, we're communicating ideas, we're communicating through the music, but also we use other signals when we're composing, when we're playing. So it just felt like a really nice sort of, something to kind of tie things all in together. And then we thought, originally it was just a piece, and we thought that'd be very nice for the album. And the album has lots of different influences in, but there are influences there from nature, from emotions. There's always a lot of stuff about emotions and feelings, nature, events, and it all seemed to work very well under this title. So I don't know if anybody else has got anything to add.
Well, I think interesting, we've got a piece called Signals. I don't know if that was a coincidence.
Oh, yeah.
Your piece is called Signals.
I think I was a little bit influenced by the idea of the album being called SEMA4, and I wrote my piece just very recently. And this is actually the piece of Signals from Space, and it's scientists have been picking up these signals for years, but they're not quite sure. Actually, I'm not quite sure where they come from.
No.
It was a scientific article, and I'm.
And
what happens is that they pick up these signals, and then the signals just stop sometimes, and they think it's to do with matter in the universe somewhere, putting out something that. Anyway.
I think what's lovely about this band is that Ali is so generous about allowing us to bring our own compositions into the repertoire, and often we bring things that are quite expressive. The kind of interesting concepts or ideas that we write about. And I think the music is always very expressive. It takes you on a journey, and it's always very soulful. I think that's the kind of identity of the band in a way.
Oh, that's very nice. Well, I mean, that's nice for you to say that I'm generous, but from my perspective, it's much more, it's not really about being generous, it's more that you all have so much to contribute. I would be mad not to include you in all that, because it's true. And when we did our first album, which was 10 years ago, that was all pieces that I had written. There was one cover, but mostly tunes I had written. But I knew that I wanted a band that would be a band. And sometimes in jazz, and I'm not saying all the time, but there are quite a lot of groups in the kind of jazz world broadly, where there's, it could be one person playing, but it could be another on the night, or there could be a couple of people on the album who never do the tour. And I never wanted that. I wanted a group that was a group. And that, of course, informed why I chose the people I did. Of course, primarily because of their incredible musical skill and contributions and the way they improvise and everything. But, of course, a lot of it was also about them as personalities and us being able to work together and all get on. And we're all very different, and there are moments when things can get a little bit, a bit tense. But on the whole, we actually get on really well. And, as anybody knows who plays or tours, playing music is, that hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours on the stage is just this little bit. The rest of it is the improvising, the travelling, the hanging about, the waiting.
Yeah.
Long journeys up the motorway, and you have to have people you can get on with, so that's all very important. And then as the band developed, each album we've had more contributions from other band members. So whereas it was mostly me to start with, now I'm sort of fitting in a bit more, and everybody's writing more, And people write the pieces for the band, so they're writing for the players. Sorry,
yeah, no. One thing I was going to say when you were talking about and you mentioned as well, Diane, the music's quite emotional. When we did that gig recently in Folkestone, and we were out, we were just selling CDs, and people were coming up, and they were just saying, "Gosh, I feel really affected by what I've just seen. I've never bought a CD before." Remember that woman said, "I've never bought a CD from a band before, but I really felt affected by your music. I feel quite sort of emotional." And the man behind her said, "Yes, so do I, so do I." And it was like we were just selling CDs, and we were sort of getting into all these really deep conversations with people about, what the music was about and what it brought up for them. And
what I think was interesting with this band as well is that, as Ali says, it's a band, and it's been the same line for a long time. But what we also do is we get together a lot and we rehearse and we work on the material. So sometimes the compositions come in, more or less fully formed, but quite often they come in as sketches, and then we'll work through things, we'll try things out, we experiment, and the music kind of evolves out of that as well. And plus, like you say, knowing who you're writing for influences that as well. So I think so the band has developed its own sound, a very distinctive sound, I think, through that process, and the amount of time we've spent together, not just playing gigs, but just actually working on the material as, in rehearsals. And I mean, we've been playing some of this stuff for the last year that we've just recorded, just to get it where we're happy with it. Yeah. And I think then when we go and perform on the stage, that really comes across, because it's the music's really together, isn't it?
And that sense of involvement is so essential, isn't it, to the process? Otherwise, you're kind of turning up at a band leader's got, play these tunes, play these tunes, play these tunes, kind of thing, and you don't really feel involved in it. Of course, you play your best, but actually, this is the band that you're a member of.
Yes.
Therefore, you contribute and you're involved. Yeah.
I think because of the nature of the music, though, what I enjoy about it is that I do, and that all of us do, really try to express ourselves, express our emotions. I think that's why the audience is picking it up, because we're expressing something. Sometimes when you're playing the jazz repertoire, it can feel a little bit heady. Yeah. But I think there's a lot of heart and soul in the music, and I think that's why the audience picks up on it.
I'll try not to.
Well, I think what's interesting as well is that it's interesting recording, because this is our fourth album, and we do play the music a lot. We've played this music a lot, and I think a lot of the music, it does evolve, even though we may have worked on it, we've rehearsed it, we've got it together, and then we'll go and do a whole lot of gigs on. The music's been really played a lot on gigs, and it evolves, I think, a lot on the gigs as well, doesn't it?
Yes,
through that process. So the concerts are part of the whole thing. It's very interesting where it ends up now, where it started to where it ends up. The material it's really kind of evolved, doesn't it?
And part of our problem is that we work on stuff. And then we've got a new arrangement. Yeah, okay. So that's thrown out the old arrangement. Is it? Yeah, okay. So we don't do that anymore. So are we playing that 4 bars or not?
Yeah, there's quite a lot.
So it goes, but it's only because we're trying to refine things and make things better all the time.
Yeah.
And I think we hold quite a good balance between the composition framework and then the space to improvise within that. And that's quite a hard thing to manage, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
it's sort of through composing as much as there's a lot of sets. The music, the pieces are quite sort of. So there's some of them are quite epic, and there's a lot of ingredients, but then there's a lot of space in there for the improvising as well. But the overall structure's got a lot of. It's well structured, isn't it? Yeah. I think so. That the balance of that is really good.
Yeah, I think so.
We do get a lot of feedback. I mean, you mentioned this about people coming and talking, and even though sometimes I've found it quite hard work, when you're doing a gig and maybe you've travelled all afternoon and you've got to drive back that night, so it's a long day. When you played one set and there's a gap, a break, the temptation is to go and just sit down quietly in another room and just have a drink or relax. And what we have done, because of having records to sell, so we've gone out, and Deirdre's actually encouraged me a lot with this. But the thing about it is to going out and actually spending time standing talking to people, selling them a CD. People come up and ask us, "Oh, well, which one shall I buy? And people quite often buy 2 or 3 CDs, all of them or something, and take them away. But they give a lot of feedback, and I think that there's many things they say. But one of the things that often is said to us, oh, it's fantastic watching you. You're so communicative. Well, they love the music, but they love the way we communicate with each other and with them. And I know this has sort of been touched on, but it seems to me it's quite a big feature. And I haven't experienced that before in other bands. I'm not saying other bands don't have that. Of course they do. But certainly from my own experience, it's really marked that people comment on that. The promoters say that they think they like us because we're very communicative, which is very nice. And people comment, a lot of the promoters, I suppose I'm talking about out of London, where the jazz audience has traditionally been older men. And of course, not that it matters how old anybody is, because we're not getting any younger. But the promoters mentioned that our gigs often draw a slightly higher number of women along. And I think for women, it's interesting and unusual. Of course, there are more younger women players coming up now, which is brilliant. But just to have a group, if you look at the sort of, the programme of jazz, to have a group that includes women in it, and women playing in the front line as well, is still unfortunately a bit unusual. But I think that's very nice, because it's a very nice positive thing. And possibly that also aids some of the communication. I don't know, but, just a thought.
A lot of people have come up at gigs and they say, I don't really normally go to jazz gigs, or this is my first jazz gig.
Yeah,
I really liked it. So it's not the kind of jazz that kind of alienates and excludes people. It includes, hopefully.
I think the music often blends different styles, doesn't it? Because you can hear folk music in there, you can hear classical music. It doesn't kind of restrict itself to one thing.
No.
And also, a lot of the material is actually quite challenging. I think it is very accessible, but the fact that we're playing in 11/8 and 7/4 are really difficult time signatures, Now you realise. We need to communicate, because the music is challenging as well. But I think people still get it.
Yeah, I think, but I suppose the thing is, it's challenging for us, but I think it does come across as surprisingly accessible to the audience. And people often comment on how we have a lot of melody, tunes. People
but maybe they think, oh, that sounds different. That's I hadn't heard that before, but not knowing that we're trying to solo in 13/8.
So it sounds different.
I haven't heard it before.